to talk more about the National Football League from ESPN. He does a tremendous job, and we always love having him on. Jeremy Fowler joins us. Jeremy, good morning, man. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
We are excited to have you on, and we're going to talk about the start off right away with your thoughts on the Eagles. Love going into it. So what'd you make of that for the Eagles, and do you think, because you were part of the story with Tim McManus, that the Hurts and might be trending in the right direction?
I think so. I mean, certainly that's going to be a compelling storyline pretty much all year, just because of the nature of the popularity of the team, and the quarterback and head coach position take a lot of the blame and take a lot of the credit. So, I saw a team that utilized Saquon, Barkley in a lot of ways I sort of expected, because I thought it was a perfect offense for him going in, where he has a dual threat quarterback. He can play off that. He's finally got an offensive line that accentuates his strengths, and he came up big. So that's the difference you see and feel right away. It's kind of a weird game, back and forth, where, when the offense was clicking, the defense was getting its footing, and when the defense was finally getting its footing, the offense had some turnovers. So I think if they clean that up, they can be even better. And so, certainly it's a team that, talent-wise, and from what we saw in Week 1, will be right in the mix every week.
Now, we saw the offensive approach that they took with Kellen Moore calling the plays and his design. I got to ask, though, are you expecting that it's going to be something where we can get into a rhythm of understanding how he's going to attack, or is every week potentially, do you think, going to look different under Kellen Moore?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, they'll adjust the game plan based on, where they see the weaknesses of the defense. So, Kellen Moore is a seasoned enough coordinator where he can do that. I don't think it will be a situation where they just roll the ball out and say this is what we do and hope for the best. So it depends on how much they want to run Jalen Hurts, I think, is sort of an element of all this, because they want to use his mobility. And I think they, to see him at his core as a guy who, when he's at his best, is running at least some. But you also want to keep him. He does want to evolve as a passer as well. So you kind of have to areas. But the good news for the Eagles, they can always get away with whatever plan they want to run because of all the options they have. If Dallas Goedert's your fourth option, you're really good. Most teams don't have that luxury.
Jeremy, we've been getting into a conversation about quarterback play in the NFL, and whether it's at a high level or not as high of a level of years past or decades past or eras past, but the contracts are going up and up and up. Do you believe that the NFL has a bit of a quarterback problem right now in terms of overall talent but also the money that they're getting?
Well, teams will tell you they have a problem. Now, is it because they're sort of crying cash poor when really they have more than enough cash to cover it, and the salary cap goes up exponentially every year? Possibly, but I do think right now it's hard for some of these teams to budget a little bit. You see with Dallas, right? Like, went into the offseason with Dak Prescott and a $55 million cap hit or whatever it was, and unprecedented leverage. And then you got to pay CeeDee Lamb too, and you saw it in their offseason. I mean, they barely signed anybody. They were really pretty frugal all year, and they just have to rely on good draft picks and young, cheap players with most of the roster, So there are only so many guys you really can pay. I mean, San Francisco, you're seeing it. I think they have like 7 guys that make at least, 15 to 18 million or whatever that threshold is, and that's like the absolute limit. It's hard to really pay anybody else, and they got Brock Purdy to handle in a year. But it's funny when you talk to like people in front offices or head coaches, they'll tell you, you hear the same theme. It's like, even if you have the 15th best quarterback or the 13th best quarterback, you'd rather pay him an exorbitant amount than having the 25th best quarterback who's going to get benched and you're not going to be able to win. So it's just, where you have a solution, you just sort of overpay and accept it. That's the stance that these teams are taking as opposed to just riding it out.
Well, do you think more teams, and John brought this up earlier when we were doing the show, do you think more teams go the Chicago Bears route where they go, hey, let's just try with Caleb Williams now instead of Justin Fields? Because not that Justin Fields has taken the league by storm, but neither is Trevor Lawrence or some of the other quarterbacks that have gotten paid a lot of money. Do you think more teams do that route?
I think they would, certainly, but you got to have the draft pick and the draft class to do it. I mean, you saw it this year pretty strong quarterback class, and that's why 6 teams drafted one of the top 12. And you saw Atlanta sort of stretch, even though they had Kirk Cousins, to try to make a future play with Michael Penix, because next year might not be as good, and you sort of have to try to account for it when the opportunity arises. It's really tough. I mean, Chicago was just lucky that they got the Carolina draft pick that went number 1. Like that fell into their lap. They didn't really plan on that. And at that point, they figured, hey, with a guy like Caleb Williams, we absolutely have to take that chance. And they kind of knew Justin Fields probably was what he was at that point. But if you're Jacksonville and you have Trevor Lawrence, you pay him because of the upside and because you're not going to have a number 1 pick again anytime soon, most likely.
If going into the season, you have ideas, positive and negative, about teams, whether you think they're going to be really good or really bad, and even you in your job, you're being an objective journalist, but you also have opinions. Is there anything you saw in week 1 where you say, I didn't see that coming at all? And do you believe that what you saw was something that's going to continue?
Yeah, I'd probably look at that Cincinnati-New England game. I knew New England was going to try to run the ball a lot with Ramondre Stevenson because the passing game would be weak, but they looked a little better than I thought, and Cincinnati looked probably a lot worse than I thought on offense. Figured Joe Burrow would be healthy, and I think he is healthy, but just coming off that wrist surgery, I thought he'd be ready to go. And they had Jamar Chase, won a new contract. That didn't work out. They didn't get to the finish line, so I thought they'd be hungry to put up a big performance. So surprised by that. I think they'll get it going, and they certainly have the pedigree to do it, but that was a big surprise to me. And even though I didn't expect the Giants to be world beaters this year, it looked pretty rough the other day. I was just surprised at just how unspirited they looked overall, And I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to pick it up or not.
Can't blame any of the 52 players knowing that Daniel Jones is their starting quarterback. Jeremy, speaking of Jamar Chase, obviously he did play, but the contract's not done yet. I'm curious to get your opinion on this. How much do you respect the job that Howie Roseman does? Because it seems like every single year we don't have that kind of problem here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I was saying that, or I think I told somebody that around the time that Jamar Chase was about to get paid. CeeDee Lamb had just gotten paid. And you look at the Devontae Smith contract, it looks brilliant right now. Devontae Smith is pound for pound probably a top 12 receiver overall. You could argue if he was maybe the center point of an offense, he'd be sneaking in the top 10. And you get him for $25 million a year. I believe that was the case. And at the time they did that, I don't know if they knew that the market was going to go up to $35 million a year, but they certainly knew that 5 or 6 receivers were coming down the pipe with big numbers. Amon-Ra St. Brown was one, CeeDee Lamb, of course, all those guys. So Brandon Ayuk, they had an idea, and they decided to get out in ahead of it, And even the A.J. Brown contract was a little surprising just because how many years he had left on his deal, but that's sort of Philly's MO. They figure, hey, if we know a player's good and he's going to stay good, let's sort of advance the money now and give him some more guarantees and a higher per year average now, but we can spread that cap hit now out over 5 or 6 years, and we can get out of this thing in 2 to 3 years if we have to still, like the way they structure it. So it's sort of a win-win for them. It's a formula that's worked out that I think you could see more teams try to utilize. It depends on how you want to do it. Some teams want to see you do it one more year, right? Like you saw it with Minnesota with Justin Jefferson and Dallas with CeeDee Lamb. Like they weren't going to pay him after 3 years. Give it that 4th year, even though you have the 5th-year option on your first-round pick rookie deal. Let's see you do it one more time. And a lot of times the player does it, and then you have to overpay even more, as opposed to just doing it early. So it really it depends on teams' threshold and patience, and a lot of times the proactivity works better, and that's what Philly tends to do.
Not going to ask you anything about your Gators, but as we look forward, but any chance you're rolling into down to see Monday Night Football? Any chance we might see in the press box or around the building?
No, I don't think this week. No,
not this week.
Back here in Connecticut. So I do like some Thursday night games, or I kind of bounce around a little bit. Monday, I usually get to watch from home, which is nice. So
that's good.
But I'll be glued in for sure.
We appreciate you always, Jeremy, and appreciate your time.